platform for presenting research that advances biodiversity and addresses challenges. Although the talks don't necessarily fit into the organized symposia. So the academic committee has collected together 6 talks this afternoon that all deal with science and community engagement. So we do have a translation of it for the link, so everyone has had a chance to check it out. There's 10 minutes allotted for everybody's session. We'll take questions. And remind everyone to submit their questions online and we'll back in the room to make sure that they get a chance to ask the questions. And without further ado, I'll introduce the first speaker. It's Martha Alpheus. On island rights, arthropods are contributing only 15% of the population. But regional database, arthropods are the most known species on the Namibian biodiversity database, and they are contributing at least 60%.
So why only some of the taxonomic groups are known compared to others? For example, for arthropods, Odonata and scorpions were the group that were identified to species level. But others, for example, Collembola, Hemipterus, and Torrifuge were the least recognized group to the species level. This is because many of them, for example, scorpions, Odonata, butterflies, everyone knows this species already. Even the public, the child, everyone knows what a butterfly is or a scorpion is. And also many of these species are actually larger in size. So they are easily spotted and can also be easily identified because they have these distinctive patterns. But also they have accessible knowledge, and anyone can access their dichotomous key, for example, and then they can easily identify this group. But on the other hand, these groups, the least identified group, are either endemic to the country. For example, Solifuge, Namibia is believed to have the highest endemic group of Solifuge. So they can only be identified to the experts. But others, for example, Collembola, are very teeny tiny. You can only identify them through the microscope. So a picture on this global database, you can hardly identify them. Others are either camouflaging in the environment. So you can only spot them when you are really looking. But the citizen side is not looking for these things. They are there for a different purpose. They can only capture what trigger their eyes or capture their eyes. So we use this data to see where the biodiversity coverage within the country. For example, now the biodiversity, the observation record from GBIF and iNaturalist, this is where they were recorded within the country. And as you can see, there is a gap, an area where you can, there are no observation records, so zero observation records. And then this kind of motivated us to study within these areas. So we are trying now to understand the taxonomic groups or the taxonomic compositions of arthropods within these areas with their observation records. And that's our ongoing research, whereby we got 3 study areas to understand the taxonomic compositions of arthropods, and also then assess how the habitat structures are influencing the diversities and the ecosystem services within these areas. So that's our ongoing project. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions. Do we have any online? Okay. All right. Well, do we have any questions in the room? Well, at the end, there is time to chat with the presenters. I will now introduce our next presenter. It's Juan Cancino. And the microphone will clip on so that it can be close to your mouth. And because it doesn't amplify the room, it's for our online participants.
Yeah, okay. And this is to advance.
So
Which one? Yeah, okay. Okay, yes. Well, good afternoon. I will speak in Spanish since there is a translation system. Soy Juan Cancino de Chile y quiero compartir con ustedes lo que hemos hecho y las palabras claves están en el título. Estamos educando para que los jóvenes y la comunidad local reconozca las especies y las valoren en su entorno local, con la ayuda de esta herramienta fantástica que descubrí en tiempos de pandemia. El Ministerio de Medio Ambiente de Chile ha adoptado esta plataforma para registrar la biodiversidad en el país, y nosotros en la universidad la hemos incluido como herramienta educativa en el currículum formal. El objetivo es darle a conocer a ustedes lo que hemos avanzado o aprendido con la generación de 14 proyectos creados desde el 2021 hasta el día de hoy, y que los reunimos en un proyecto paraguas llamado Naturalistas en Acción, y la aplicación concreta de esta herramienta al campus principal de la universidad, y desde ahí proyectarnos hacia el trabajo con la comunidad. Vamos a analizar la composición de los observadores, nuestros estudiantes y los profesores, porque 6 profesores que nos hemos unido en esto. Este es el proyecto Paraguas. Ahí está el QR que puede llevarles al proyecto. Tenemos 181 estudiantes y 6 profesores que han sido parte de estos 14 proyectos reunidos en este proyecto Paraguas. 1.199 especies registradas a lo largo de Chile por esta comunidad, 6.616 observaciones en Chile desde 20 grados de latitud norte hasta 40 grados de latitud, sur, ambas sur, de 20 a 42 de latitud sur. El 64% de estas observaciones tienen grado de investigación y pueden migrar, ¿no es cierto?, a otras plataformas. Hay alta diversidad porque ningún grupo está excluido de los proyectos. Aquí se trata de que los estudiantes se sientan que son naturalistas y se transforman inmediatamente en naturalistas cuando registran sus primeras especies. Como somos una comunidad en aprendizaje, un porcentaje muy alto de las observaciones han sido mejoradas por la comunidad. Ese es el valor de poder ponerle nombre y nombre científico a lo que la gente observa. Esta es la composición de nuestros estudiantes. Ahí son 12 áreas de la UNESCO, porque estos son cursos abiertos a todas las carreras de la universidad, especialmente un curso que se llama Historia Natural de Chile, que desde este año se llama En tiempos de IA, de 23 carreras de la universidad. Solo el 38% de estos estudiantes estudian biología y 30% son de 5 carreras de pedagogía. Entonces ahí hay personas que van a ser profesores, o ya son profesores, y luego multiplican el uso de la plataforma con sus estudiantes. Tenemos estudiantes del área de la salud, 6 carreras, de derecho, muy importante hoy día por los temas legales en torno a la protección de la biodiversidad y de los ambientes. Esa es nuestra composición. Miramos, y esto es lo nuevo, qué tan activos se han mantenido después que se cierran los proyectos, porque estos, como son proyectos ligados a cursos, duran un semestre o 4 meses o a veces un mes. Entonces, el 70% de los integrantes de los proyectos han agregado nuevas observaciones, a pesar de que ya no forman parte de esta comunidad, y hay nuevas especies también en los sitios personales de sus cuentas. Y aquí constatamos lo que se da en esta comunidad de observadores que hay algunos pocos que son muy activos. Si miramos las barras azules, ¿no es cierto? Y miramos allá, hay una persona que contribuyó 2.551 observaciones desde que dejó de ser miembro de los proyectos que creamos con ellos. Y lo mismo pasa, ¿no es cierto?, para el número de especies nuevas. En la universidad, ese es el proyecto Paraguas. Y hemos creado, también con la ayuda de las facilidades que da iNaturalist, archivos para áreas delimitadas mediante el archivo KML. Este es para el campus principal de la universidad, está ubicado en el corazón de la ciudad, son 20 hectáreas y tenemos ese número de observaciones, 390 especies. Y esto para la comunidad universitaria es súper importante, darse cuenta de que los 7.000 o 8.000 usuarios del campus comparten el campus con 390 especies. Un campus además que tiene algunos remanentes del bosque que cubría los lomajes de estos cerros antes de que se poblara. Y lugar de anidamiento de aves, que los tenemos registrados, y da la posibilidad de que las autoridades se involucren y, por ejemplo, acabamos de recuperar esa hermosa hilera de Chilean Firebush, del notro, que es un árbol poco longevo, y ya nos quedaba una sola planta de ese árbol, y con mis estudiantes del curso que estamos dictando ahora, involucramos al rector de la universidad y plantamos 10 nuevos jóvenes ejemplares de esto para recuperar eso. Eso es lo que permite un proyecto como este. Y para terminar, 2 ejemplos de proyección hacia la comunidad. En alianza con el Museo de Historia Natural de Concepción, tenemos ciclos de conferencia y avistamiento en terreno. El primero, fireflies en Concepción. La gente dice, pero yo las vi cuando era niño, están extintas. Bueno, las hemos vuelto a poner en el escenario. La buena noticia es que existen. Llevamos 2 años de este ciclo. Damos conferencias en el museo, invitamos a personas, vamos a avistarlas. Tenemos alianza con el Parque Nacional, con 3 sitios privados de conservación que nos permiten entrar con el público, y este año, enero 2026, se va a transformar en el Festival de las Luciérnagas. Y el otro más reciente, el Puya Chilensis, en un santuario de la naturaleza, lo hemos creado recién, hicimos la misma secuencia para llevar gente a ver esta maravillosa flor que ha sido introducido en lugares distintos del mundo, y en esos lugares del mundo se vuelve viral cada vez que florece. Nosotros estamos trabajando con esta herramienta en la localidad importante donde se recopiló la Bajeria rosia, Ruiz y Pavón, la flor nacional de Chile, y esta planta que es la especie típica para el género Puya, un género que solo vive en América del Sur y América Central, descrita por el abate Molina, nuestro gran abate Molina. Termino aquí, y si tienen su celular, les regalo esa canción, porque para trabajar con la comunidad hay que ser innovativo, y ahí tenemos una canción creada con IA para promover el avistamiento de luciérnagas. Esta es mi presentación. Muchas gracias por su atención.
We had a little extra time from before, so if we probably have time for one question from the room.
Sí, dale. ¿Cómo estás? Pues qué lindo proyecto. Yo te quería preguntar, ¿cuándo hicieron pues, la implementación con la comunidad? ¿Ustedes eran los que hacían los registros en la aplicación o la comunidad con sus teléfonos? Y también, digamos, ¿había acceso a Internet en esa zona o cómo harían en un lugar donde de pronto no hay acceso a Internet?
I don't know if people speaking English you got it on the application.
Cuando hemos trabajado con la comunidad, le hemos pedido que lleven sus celulares. Afortunadamente estamos en un lugar donde hay señal. Con el de la Puya, la última, incluimos un taller para que la gente, o sea, para que los asistentes crearan su propia cuenta, por si no la tenían. Entonces, eso es lo nuevo que estamos implementando. Y donde no hay señal, afortunadamente, no sé cómo funciona la caja negra, pero normalmente si uno toma fotografías con el celular, lo ubica de todas maneras. Y lo otro son las cámaras digitales.
Gracias. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Unfortunately, I didn't ask you how to pronounce your name first. Babajide Agbula. Not here. Comparative data analysis of data set collected from 4 biodiversity projects in Nigeria.
No.
Not here? All right. So we'll go to the next presenter, which is Lauren Oates. Yeah, we'll go to Lauren, and then if Babajide comes, then we can just do them at the end.
At the same time, we can make everybody wait for.
Yes, and sometimes there's technology issues and we have to change the order. So Lauren, did you want to come up? So I think it's best if you click it or hold it.
How's that? Oh dear. We're tied up. I'm gonna put this here. Here we go. Okay, you look very serious, Enrique. I'm Lauren. I'm an ecologist and a land change scientist, and I work with an organization called Adventure Scientists. And for 15 years, we have been collecting large-scale data sets around the world for environmental and health problem solving. We work in citizen science, but I don't think of it as a iNaturalist type app. We develop protocols very specific to the project, train volunteers and or community members, and then help deploy them at scale. And I'm here to talk today about Ground Truth for Nature, which is a new initiative we are launching. So let's start with a challenge. Monitoring technologies are booming. Satellites, AI, sensors, all advancing at an incredible pace. I've only been here 24 hours, and I've already learned about a lot more tools, and I've been researching this for quite a while. But these tools are only as good as the field data that they're trained and validated on. And the biggest gaps still exist in ecosystems that matter in terms of climate and biodiversity, places like tropical forests, mangroves, and peatlands. And as many of you know and have discussed already during the conference, there's a huge opportunity when local people are part of the science. Monitoring systems become more trusted, more equitable, and more enduring. So Ground Truth is aiming to deliver standardized, scalable field data in the world's most data poor and high priority regions. The purpose is to validate emerging models and tools in environmental monitoring, strengthen new technologies, and give decision makers confidence. But equally important, ground truth is designed to build local capacity and ownership. So monitoring doesn't just happen once, but becomes enduring, equitable, and trusted by the very communities closest to the land. We want to create a global ground truth network through systematic data collection and also partnership. Before I go into ground truth in this new initiative, I'll just give you a little more background about adventure scientists. As I mentioned, for 15 years, we've been designing and delivering large-scale data collection for conservation leaders around the world. Through our participatory model, we train and equip community members to collect rigorous data in remote and challenging environments. And we've proven that these approaches can generate high-quality data sets that can change policy and practice. We've typically worked in these 4 areas. With ground truth, I'm going to talk specifically about the first 2, forests and biodiversity. We're envisioning 2 pathways of work at this time. But I'd also love to give you some samples of the projects we've done in the past so you get a sense of the scale and diversity. So the projects we have taken on address an environmental or health issue to which the solutions have been data limited. And they have a clear pathway from the data collection to lasting impact or a management or decision need. And then lastly, they require skills to collect the data in hard to reach places. So these are some of my favorite projects. I'll just give you a quick overview today. Our microplastics initiative here in the middle, for example, created the world's largest data set on microplastic pollution, which was used by more than 300 institutions and governments to shape decisions in marine policy. In forests, we have built genetic reference libraries that help verify the origin of timber, preventing illegal logging and slowing deforestation. And across the United States, we sampled nearly 200 wild and scenic rivers, generating data that informed land management and water management. These projects have really demonstrated something powerful, I think, that our trained volunteers can deliver credible science and create data sets that drive some real world impact. And ground truth will be the next evolution of that work. So I love looking at maps because these always make me go wow, even when I have seen them before. But this is just an example of the microplastics project. You can hop online and check it out, but zoom in, and every one of these data points was collected by a trained volunteer or community member across the globe. Here is data from our timber project. This is a really cool database. Again, these are individuals or teams that have gone, out into remote forests or forests in their communities across the Pacific Northwest and in the Eastern United States. If you hop on and check out the system, you'll see the photograph, the location, and every one of these had a consistent sample collection to help with the eDNA reference database. So this is an enormous amount of organizing to be able to get those samples going to the right places. So with ground truth, I'm going to talk specifically about the 2 pathways we're pursuing, both in forests and above ground biomass and in biodiversity. The problem here, carbon accounting depends on knowing how much biomass is stored in forests. But current remote sensing models often have errors ranging from 10 to 40%, if not more. That kind of uncertainty undermines trust in carbon markets, slows the flow of finance, and limits investment in protecting forests. So our role, we are working to collect and deliver data for regional calibration and benchmarking. We're designing this initiative now. We're also working to align those protocols with gold standards. So these will be a field initiative that has plot data that others can use to bring in LiDAR or TLS, which is another technique based in the field. And these data sets will serve 2 purposes, one for regional calibration of these models, and also independent benchmarking to test models side by side in regions of priority. So our current areas of interest that we're exploring are in Peru, Colombia, Southeast Asia, Cerrado, and also Central Africa, Bolivia. I think I have Colombia there twice, just shouting out for Colombia. Yeah, and then the second pathway that we are developing is focused on biodiversity and protected area monitoring and adaptive management. So protected areas, as you all know, are central to achieving target 3 of the Global Biodiversity Framework But right now, many managers don't have scalable monitoring systems, and that gap limits their ability to demonstrate outcomes and respond in timely ways to threats or degradation. So we will be working to fill that gap with a flexible toolkit that combines ground truth data with emerging technologies like bioacoustics, eDNA, and remote sensing. The protocols are tailored to local realities so managers can adapt to them, but standardize enough to be globally comparable. And this approach captures what satellites alone cannot with the help of trained community members. So we're exploring these projects currently in green list sites where we would start with a group of pilots. 3 minutes. Okay. So our cross-cutting values guiding this will continue to guide everything we do moving forward. Rights, we respect land tenure and indigenous sovereignty, and our protocols are guided by fair and care principles. I want to thank you all for the sessions you've been having on these topics. It's been really helpful. Standards, we design open and transparent methods wherever possible while protecting sensitive data where needed. And third, scale, we create lightweight, repeatable protocols that can be deployed across ecosystems, forests, mangroves, and agroforestry, for example. Just as important, we will be working to build lasting local capacity and ensure the benefits of data collection flow back to these communities. So this is how monitoring can be sustainable over time. So the goal is to help make climate and biodiversity solutions more effective, more accountable, and more equitable. And of course, we can't do this alone. We're seeking partners and collaborators who want to help build this effort with us. Specifically, you may have tech tools that need validation or calibration around the world or in particular areas of interest. Or you may be interested in deploying new tech in the places where you're working as a practitioner. But please feel free to contact me or talk after the session if you have any interest. Thank you.
Are there any questions? We should check online. Are there any questions? Enrique has a question. And I think we have a little extra time, so we have room.
What is the business model? So you get like a company or researcher hires you and you tap into a volunteer community and develop some kind of in situ measurements based on this volunteer community. But what do you offer? You know, what if I'm let's say looking for this kind of solution? What do you offer? You have a large volunteer community to tap. It's your experience in previous projects. I'm just curious. It is very interesting.
Yeah. I would say both. Traditionally, we have worked to get volunteers coming to community to places or volunteers from the community. We've also done paid models. But right now, for example, we have a new project on coral reef health throughout 4 Latin American countries in partnership with government and organizations. And that's community volunteers that want to come out and help with data collection and that are volunteers. With Ground Truth, we envision both philanthropic money funding some of that work and also licensable data sets depending on the clients that we work with.
Well, thank you. Oh.
For example, if I want to join your volunteer program, is it possible, or is closed, or how it works?
So once we have a project in place that has the protocols we've developed, we then typically work within communities and with government partners to advertise and promote that. So yes, for sure. Like I have even participated prior to working for the organization in a survey that was in a community that I was visiting. I thought, oh, that'd be interesting. I'd love to take the training and help contribute to that data set. So that's the typical model that we've worked under. And right now, we don't have projects underway in Colombia, but for sure that would be an opportunity in the future.
Thank you. And I encourage everyone to connect after the session. I'll now invite Dean Penchef to come up. And as we've learned, it's really important to clip this close to your mouth.
I will do the best I can. We'll see how it goes. I'm Dean Penchef. I work at the Natural History Museum of LA County, and I'm here to talk to you about about science today. We're all here because we are interested in communicating about science. Everyone here is doing that. That's what the whole meeting is about. Essentially, data is communicating about science. First point I want to make is that good communication of science is good communication. There is nothing different about communicating science well than communicating anything else well. If we do that well, if we as the biodiversity community communicate our science well, we all win. We get support, and the work we do propagates out to help make the world better. This matters a lot. But there's a problem. By and large, scientists suck at communicating. We're not very good communicators out of the box. And that is a problem that has plagued us for a while, but it's a problem that we can do something about. We can think about it, we can work on it, we can practice, and we can hone how we communicate in some simple ways to make our communications more effective. Does it really matter? I'm going to make a case very briefly that it does. I'm going to use the example of communication about the science of COVID-19 in America. This is one of the first press conferences. When COVID-19 hit America, we have 7 people standing there. We decided, as the science community represented by the White House, to have 7 people giving messages about COVID. For some reason, we thought that was going to be effective. A year later, we're still doing the same thing. That's the standard daily press conference from the White House. A year later, after COVID had first showed up, we now have 4 people giving the talks. A year after that, we're still doing that. At this point, we have 4 people. We're now allowing them to sit next to each other at a table because we figured out that was okay by then. But we're at a point where there are New York Times articles saying we need to stop giving competing messages. Please figure out what the message is here. Did it matter? Yeah, it really mattered. This is a paper that estimated the number of preventable COVID-19 deaths in the United States in an 18-month period because people didn't get vaccinated, because they didn't get good science communication. 232,000 people died because of poor communication of science. It matters. This is an example from our community, from biodiversity. This is a leaflet, 30-page pamphlet put out by the USC, University of Southern California, Annenberg School for Communications. They are the best of the best. This is one of the top communication schools in the United States. It trains people in marketing and communications. They put this out. You can take pictures of this. I don't recommend you read it. They, in 30 pages, decided to put out 8 different challenges that we need to communicate about biodiversity, 8 of them. They layered on top of that another 7 additional framing concepts that you can use to talk about those 8 challenges. They then proceeded to come up with a whole bunch of obfuscating recommendations. Don't oversimplify, but while you're not oversimplifying, make sure you emphasize the combined effects of all of the things that are going on impacting biodiversity. And by the way, pick non-charismatic mascots, because it's really important to educate the public that non-charismatic things are important. So that's going to work really, really well. This is why we lose. This is a bunch of in-house communicators speaking to themselves. This is not a group of people who have figured out how to communicate to the outside world. We can do better than this. I'm pointing to a single person, Randy Olson. Randy Olson is a marine biologist, had a tenure position, tenure faculty in marine biology, and decided that he was getting tired of having 6 people read his papers, and thought that there was a better way to communicate science. So he quit his job, went to USC Film School, started making feature-length documentary films, and also then launched himself into a career in science communication. He had some very important insights. Well, amongst which, published this book quite a few years ago, Talking Substance in an Age of Style, and that is part of his insight. Communication is about style. It is about how you do it, as well as what you do. His insight was that we have to use narrative structures to communicate. And the power of narrative, the power of embedding information in a narrative is crucial. And number 2, there's an industry that's figured out how to do this. Hollywood makes billions of dollars by communicating narrative well. They've figured it out. They've honed it. They've evolutionarily figured it out. Some movies did well. We figured out how to make good movies. Other movies did not do well. Every single successful movie is built on a very simple narrative structure. You can be taught this in film school. I'm not talking about the really cool art house film you saw that had this really personal. Those are not publicly interesting films. Successful films are built on a very simple structure. Turns out all communication is built on very simple narrative structures. What is that structure? Well, no, not quite. I'm ahead of myself. If I haven't convinced you that narrative is important yet, I want to bring this gentleman to your attention. If you do not know Steve Bannon, he is largely the architect of the communication strategy that is used and was used to bring to power Donald Trump in the United States. Whether you agree or disagree with the messaging that's coming from Donald Trump and his people, it is one of the most effective messaging campaigns of the 21st century. This is the man who is behind it. And this is a quote from an interview that was taken with him just before he went to prison. He understands that to get anything done, you have to make people understand. So therefore, constantly we're in a battle of narrative, unrestricted narrative warfare. Narrative is everything. He understands that. So what is that simple structure? It's very simple. You set people up for your message, give them the necessary background, which needs to be very precise and very concise. Give them a problem, an issue, a crisis, and then give them a solution for that. You're setting people up, bringing them into your world, bringing you into their world, and causing despair, causing stress, causing tension. That wakes up your mind to pay attention to what's being said, and then you get to offer your solution. Usually, the setup is done in a series of and clauses. This happened, and that happened, and there is this, and we are here. However, but there is a problem, and here's a solution to it. Just summarized as ABT, and, but, therefore, structure. Pretty much every narrative in human history has followed this basic structure. It is a very simple structure to articulate. I just spent about 1.5 minutes doing that. Very simple to say. I have 3 minutes left. Thank you. But it's quite hard to embody, to make it work. Why? We are trained as scientists to think that putting more facts and more observations in front of people is very, very convincing. It is not. It is much more important to start with one singular narrative. Figure out your one most important message, not all the others that are also important, but the one most important message. And there is Jack Palance being in City Slickers, a movie for those of you who are movie buffs, making the point that you need to have one thing. This is something that business has understood for a long time. Every time you see an advertisement, you're being advertised one thing. Embed that in an ABT narrative so it gets across in a narrative structure, and practice doing that. Practice with your friends, practice with your colleagues. Come up with one short paragraph, try it out, change it, fix it, make it more effective. Don't despair in the face of disinformation. Instead, yes, refine your message to that one singular message that is the one most important thing you need to get across. Embody that in an ABT narrative and practice that. I want to give credit and observation to Jane Goodall, who recently passed away. was one of the most effective communicators about the importance of biodiversity, biology, and the environment. And that was her message. What you have to do is get into the heart. How do you get into the heart? With stories. She understood the power of narrative. She understood that that's how you change the world, and that's how we can all change the world. Thanks.
Don't leave. I think we have time for some questions.
I could try to repeat it. If it's a short question, I'll just repeat the question. Maybe. Or
I happen to be reading now a book called The Crisis of Narration, if you know it. Yeah, anyway, that says that like years ago, narration was how people lived, but now we are getting further and further away because of social media, you know, short attention spans. So storytelling is somehow in fashion again, but it's not embedded in people. So do you think that it's still possible to communicate, mainly in younger people, such messages through narration? Or how could we adapt it to newer ways of communication?
yeah, that is an excellent question in that it also brings up the scale of a narrative. A narrative can be a single sentence. A narrative can be a 4-volume series. And one of the observations that Randy Olson made is that at the beginning of Twitter, you may remember it was limited to the length of what was at that time a text message, 100, and I might have the exact number wrong, 140 characters. And it didn't succeed very well. And his insight was because people couldn't get a narrative into 140 characters, they could just put a couple of nouns and a verb or two. When they decided to double that length, all of a sudden you could get a short sentence. You could get here we are, the and, but, and the world is coming to an end and I'm telling you why. Whatever it is that turned into the crap storm that is Twitter today. We are responding to narrative. We're responding to short narratives in many cases, but we are responding to narrative. And I'm going to use an example that appalls me to use, but I'm afraid I'm going to use it. Make America Great Again. It's 4 words. And it's an entire narrative in 4 words that has captured the hearts of a lot of my countrymen. It was very effective. It was very short. So yes, you can communicate with short narrative or longer narrative. What a depressing note to end on. Sorry.
I have a question. So in the COVID things you showed, there was the explanation that always one message is better. Isn't it some case where one message is not sufficient to describe reality and then giving only one message is lying?
So there's 2 questions there. So one is, are there things that are, I'll slightly interpret, perhaps too complex for one single message? The answer, of course, is yes. And we look around at biology. There is no one single message for biology because it's very complex. But at one given moment, there is one message that you want to get across that is more important than everything else. That's the focus point. Everything else at that moment is secondary. Maybe the next day, you can highlight the second message, but at one time, it has to be one message. The other question is about maybe you can't represent things without lying. This is a very difficult thing for science. It is much easier to construct a persuasive narrative when you are unconstrained by the truth. We have all learned that in the past few years. We are constrained by the truth. That's our ethics. It makes it harder for us. But I think we're up to the challenge because I think we're smart.
Thank you. And so I'll now call up our final presenter, Juliana Rodriguez Cortez. It's best if you click it before.
Buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy Juliana Rodríguez Ortiz de la Secretaría Distrital de Ambiente y voy a presentarles el programa de monitoreo de biodiversidad urbana para Bogotá con estrategias de investigación y ciencia ciudadana. ¿Por qué necesitamos nosotros un programa de monitoreo? Bogotá, a pesar de ser una urbe enorme y pues bastante gris, muchas construcciones, tiene un sistema distrital de áreas protegidas también muy grande que poca gente conoce. Tenemos 32 áreas protegidas entre parques de montaña, humedales, paisajes sostenibles y necesitamos datos, necesitamos tomar datos validados con buena calidad, verificables, que nos permitan contribuir al manejo de estas áreas y pues a proponer estrategias y acciones de conservación para que la biodiversidad pues no desaparezca. ¿Qué nosotros estamos buscando con nuestro programa? Diferentes preguntas nos surgen, obviamente estas van cambiando a medida que vamos avanzando. ¿Se están degradando nuestros ecosistemas o al contrario los estamos recuperando? ¿Qué especies tenemos? ¿Cuál es nuestra riqueza? ¿Cuál es nuestra biodiversidad? ¿Cómo van cambiando las especies, las poblaciones, las comunidades? También queremos saber cómo está interactuando la gente con la biodiversidad. Estamos en entornos urbanos rodeados de personas y hay una estrecha relación de las personas con estas áreas. Entonces, aquí es donde nosotros involucramos la ciencia ciudadana. Otra de las preguntas muy importantes es también ver cómo el manejo de nuestras áreas es efectivo o no. Y todos estos datos que nosotros tomamos nos sirven para dar línea o cambiar nuestras estrategias en caso dado para poder tener una efectiva manejo de estas áreas, una efectiva conservación. Nuestro objetivo, pues como ya les he mencionado, es generar datos sobre la biodiversidad de nuestras áreas y que estos datos nos sirvan para poder usarlos en estrategias efectivas de manejo y conservación. Listo. ¿Cómo empezamos nosotros? Empezamos con conociendo las áreas. Vamos a visitarlas, hacemos un levantamiento inicial de datos y con estos datos nosotros formulamos unos protocolos. Los protocolos son específicos y estandarizados para cada grupo. Después de esto hicimos durante el 2021 y el 2022 el levantamiento de la línea base de la biodiversidad de estas áreas y esto lo vamos a replicar cada 3 años con el fin de empezar a tener los datos multitemporales y ver cómo va cambiando. Esto es lo que llamamos la actualización de la línea base. ¿Qué sigue? Tener estos datos para la comparación multitemporal, poder ver patrones en el tiempo, cambios de abundancia, de riqueza, de distribución espacial y también nos apoya en la verificación del cumplimiento de nuestros planes de manejo ambiental de las áreas. Cada área tiene su propio plan de manejo ambiental. Podemos estar evaluando también qué también nos está yendo con la implementación de estos PMAs. A partir de eso, pues hacemos otros análisis como tendencias, el uso de indicadores, evaluación de las intervenciones, también, por ejemplo, en términos de restauración ecológica, qué también nos está yendo con la restauración, qué también nos está yendo con el manejo, con los mantenimientos de las áreas y generamos recomendaciones o líneas para una efectiva conservación. Nuestro alcance territorial en Bogotá, no sé si ustedes lo saben, pero Bogotá el 25% es urbano, el 75% es rural. Entonces es una extensión bastante grande. Nosotros iniciamos únicamente en las áreas protegidas distritales de carácter urbano, como son reservas distritales de humedal y parques distritales ecológicos de montaña. Los paisajes sostenibles son netamente rurales. En este momento no hemos empezado a monitorear, pues por cosas logísticas y de tiempo, pero pues la idea es ampliar nuestro programa hacia los paisajes rurales, como son los paisajes sostenibles. A partir de toda esta información y en nuestra formulación de los protocolos, abrimos esto a otras áreas que no necesariamente son las áreas protegidas, pero que tienen una importancia ecológica grande para Bogotá, como son los conectores ecosistémicos, hay bosques urbanos y acuerdos de conservación, que son acuerdos realizados con propietarios privados, que tienen sus áreas verdes, tienen sus propias áreas, entonces ahí entramos nosotros a hacer un acuerdo y monitorear esa área como parte del acuerdo. Ay, disculpen. ¿Qué monitoreamos nosotros? La flora y la fauna principalmente, sin dejar de lado también la calidad de agua, parámetros físico-químicos y hidrobiológicos de las reservas distritales de humedal. Tenemos artrópodos, aves, mamíferos, herpetos. Listo. Nosotros somos un equipo no tan grande y Bogotá es un espacio enorme. Entonces no podemos recoger toda la información que quisiéramos. Tampoco somos un centro de investigación. Hay muchas preguntas que queremos responder que muchas veces no tenemos forma. Y aquí es donde entran las herramientas de ciencia ciudadana y de investigación participativa o también pues como asociaciones con entes de investigación o entidades educativas, universidades, colegios, para poder responder estas preguntas y cerrar estos vacíos de información. Nosotros realizamos diferentes eventos. Por un lado, la investigación es tratar de promover que los estudiantes vengan a nuestras áreas y nos ayuden a cerrar esos gaps que tenemos de conocimiento y que nosotros no podemos hacernos cargo de investigarlos. Entonces, les apoyamos con toda la parte logística. Tenemos un equipo pues también de profesionales que los pueden apoyar y apoyarles como a codirigir sus trabajos de grado. Y por otro lado tenemos las actividades de ciencia ciudadana, que vienen siendo actividades muy participativas o también propuestas de proyectos de investigación. Como les dije, las áreas protegidas están rodeadas de gente que está muy pendiente de estas áreas. Estas áreas tienen unos grupos de gente que está siempre, también ellos nos realizan muchas veedurías a nosotros de cómo estamos manejando el área, y con ellos es que nosotros hemos empezado a trabajar, a recoger datos. Esto nos permite, el equipo, como les cuento, es bastante reducido. Nosotros pues podemos visitar no todas las áreas, les cuento, son 17 humedales y 8 parques de montaña. Entonces, esto nos sirve, tener datos de ciencia ciudadana casi que en tiempo real, nos sirve para tener un set de datos más amplio y en área, geográficamente hablando, también en áreas más extensas. ¿Cómo los registramos? Principalmente en Naturalista y en IBERT. Entonces, creamos proyectos y aquí viene un poco de la pregunta que tú hacías. Hay zonas de aquí que no tienen conexión. Nosotros creamos proyectos de cada evento y de cada área protegida. Estos proyectos, pues la gente se une a esos proyectos, generamos capacitaciones constantes en el uso de las plataformas, en cómo crear sus usuarios y el celular cuando tiene activado el GPS, la foto se sube sola aunque no haya señal en el momento. Entonces ahí estamos nosotros realizando también la curaduría de las fotos, usamos estos registros también para nuestros datos. Publicamos en el CIP Colombia, en este momento tenemos más de 10.000 registros publicados desde que empezó el programa de monitoreo, y el Observatorio Ambiental de Bogotá, que es propio del distrito, ahí también encuentran información de la biodiversidad urbana. Bueno, pues aquí simplemente decirles que con estas investigaciones nosotros estamos aportando a cerrar pues estas brechas de información y creamos también pues datos sólidos para poder tomar decisiones. Con todos estos datos, ¿qué hacemos? Tenemos este set enorme que ya les mencioné. Hemos desarrollado diferentes tipos de indicadores. Hemos pues podido ver cambios en la cobertura vegetal, índices de diversidad de diferentes naturalezas. Tenemos unas especies de importancia ecológica, pueden ser los valores objeto de conservación de cada área protegida, especies amenazadas, migratorias, invasoras, que también son monitoreadas, y hemos calculado índices de naturalidad y de fragilidad que nos muestran cómo las áreas protegidas van mejorando en términos de biodiversidad. Adicionalmente, hemos desarrollado el índice de Singapur. Aquí les doy como un pincelazo porque ya tengo que despedirme. El viernes lo vamos a presentar, el índice de biodiversidad urbana para Bogotá. Hicimos nosotros el primer cálculo en el 2023, que nos muestra cómo está la ciudad en términos de diversidad, en términos de servicios ecosistémicos y en términos de gobernanza. Y nos permite hacer como una evaluación de nosotros mismos, de cómo vamos mejorando nosotros como ciudad en estos términos. Bueno, los retos, darle continuidad a esto, seguir actualizando nuestras bases de datos, seguir cerrando los gaps que tenemos de información, hacer todo nuestro fortalecimiento de investigación. Es como ha sido uno de los retos integrar a la ciudadanía en esto y a las instituciones. Y pues tenemos también la elaboración de los planes. Aprovecho pues para darle gracias. Esto es posible al grupo de monitoreo que está aquí presente, que son quienes caminan la ciudad día y noche tomando todos estos datos que ustedes ven aquí. Muchísimas gracias. Okay. Ah, tenemos pósters abajo con los resultados por si quieren ir a ver.
Thank you, everyone, for those wonderful presentations. We are officially out of time, but if people want to ask a question, I think we're not holding you here against your will.
I have a question for you, maybe you about volunteers who contribute a lot. How can you reward them or just say thank you to the volunteers who have...
Bueno, nosotros lo que hacemos es sacar reportes. Entonces, en estos reportes siempre hay los agradecimientos, principalmente en redes. Entonces, en redes se mencionan todas las actividades, todos los listados, todas las personas, básicamente como un reconocimiento más a nivel como de las redes sociales.
Great question. I'm trying to think so I've only been with the organization for the past year or so, and we don't have a database that we make public of the volunteers. We've certainly done some storytelling from projects with volunteers, and those are people that have agreed to be identified. Typically in our projects, a lot of the fieldwork requires some kind of kit in advance. Sometimes they are projects that are just executed on an app with some, but a lot of times there are some kind of field tools with it. And in those, we will send some kind of field, some kind of gift with them often. And there's certainly been paid models as well. What I also wanted to highlight to your question earlier, with Ground Truth, we do not have a project yet in Colombia, but our Coral Reefs project that I mentioned is with Colombia, is one of the countries. So if you are a diver or interested in being a diver, or there are other people, that's a project you can get involved in here.
Because I've also been involved in volunteer data collecting projects, I'll also answer that question too. Over and over, we found that the highest value to the participants was being put in touch with and being able to work with other people who were interested in that subject. The high input volunteers are people who are already passionately interested. Get them in touch with other people who think like them, and it's endless at that point.
Excellent question. Thank you.
Actually, we don't work with voluntary because the students, the reward they get, they pass. And then with the community, working, for example, with fireflies, is something that people want to see them again. So it's people that is already involved with interest in seeing them again. So, and that is a public that is related with the Natural History Museum. So they have their lot of people that goes to activities in the museum. So that's what this joint work between the university and the Natural History Museum brings people that is already interested in the theme we convocate people to.
Thank you. One more comment.
It's great to hear other people's thoughts on it. I think also it's the experience too. I worked on a project where we organized a lot of volunteers to bike road segments that had high areas of wildlife kill. And we were looking for where are areas of where do we find these carcasses, and eventually that information filtered into new road policies and road changes in some of the road structures. And now that one area that I bike past, or drive by on a often, daily basis, I just think about that, what we did in that place. So I think a lot of the people that end up working with us are people who want to get outside into nature, wherever your nature is, and it gives them a sense of meaning in that too, in addition to those that they would get on their own.
Thank you, everybody, for this totally unscheduled discussion. It was excellent. And that concludes our session. Thank you.